Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Hannah, and today I am so excited to wrap up my August reading. I feel like August has been one of the best reading months I've had this year. The beginning of this year had a lot of 3-star books for me, but I think I'm finally getting out of that, and I'm reading some just really great books. Especially this month my ratings are all over the place, but I still really loved and enjoyed all the experiences of reading the books I read this month, so I'm very excited to go through them with you and talk about them. Most of the books I read this past month are from the library haul I did at the beginning of August, so if you were curious about any of my thoughts on those books, this is the video for you. So without further ado, I'm just gonna pull out my reading journal and we will go through all the books I read. Okay, so the first book I read in August was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is a very hyped book this summer. A lot of people are saying it's the book of the summer. It came out early July, I believe. I've read one Liz Moore book before. I read The Unseen World back when I was in college, over 5 years ago maybe. And I had a lot of mixed feelings about that book. I really loved the writing, and the beginning of it was super intriguing and I was really into it, but then the ending just totally let me down. I still enjoyed it, and I've been wanting to try another Liz Moore book since I did very much enjoy the beginning of The Unseen World. So when this book was getting a lot of buzz, I wanted to pick it up. So The God of the Woods is a mystery thriller. It's set in a summer camp in the 70s, and at this camp, one of the campers goes missing from her bed. And while that in and of itself is a big mystery, the bigger mystery is that a decade prior, her brother also went missing on this same land, and these siblings are part of this family who owns the land that the camp is on. So there's this big mystery of what's going on with this rich family who owns this camp, and why are these children going missing, presumably being murdered. Well, this book has a timeline that goes back and forth. There are a lot of different perspectives, so you're seeing this case, this investigation from such a wide lens. You're seeing every single angle of it. You don't know who to trust. Everyone seems like a suspect. I really, really enjoyed it. This is almost a 500-page book, but it did not feel like that at all. I flew through it and was very much intrigued throughout the whole thing, and I'm happy to say I did not guess the ending. Sometimes the endings of thrillers are a bit underwhelming for me. I did not guess the ending. However, I do have mixed feelings about the ending. It sort of used a trope that I don't love, but I also liked that it made sense in this story. And overall, I did really enjoy this book, and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, which isn't a bad rating at all. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's a perfect late summer sort of book, with the summer camp vibes and the mystery, the suspense, and the fast-paced nature of the book made it really, really good. So that was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. The next book I'm going to talk about is one I've been so excited to talk about ever since I finished it, and that is A Prayer for Owen Meany by Irving. I talked about this one a little bit in my library haul video that I did, and I don't feel like I fully did justice to what this book is about when I talked about it in that video. I feel like in order to give a good summary of what this book is, I have to read the first line of the book because it really summarizes everything. I am doomed to remember a boy with a wrecked voice, not because of his voice, or because he was the smallest person I ever knew, or even because he was the instrument of my mother's death, but because he is the reason I believe in God. I wrote a full, in-depth review for this book on my blog that you can find linked below, but this book follows two young boys, John, our narrator, and his best friend, Owen Meany. Owen Meany is a very underdeveloped, small person with a very distinct voice that's emphasized throughout the book through using, like, all of his dialogue uses all caps, which is a very interesting literary device that this book uses. As the first line says, Owen Meany accidentally kills John's mother at a Little League game when he hits a baseball that knocks her down. And from there, Owen goes on this journey where he believes he is, like, God's instrument, and he's constantly searching for, like, what God wants from him, trying to find purpose. And through this journey, he believes that he knows how he's going to die and when. And so from there, it really becomes like a coming-of-age story between John and Owen, and how the events in their childhood impact their view of the world and how they grow up. It's very episodic, so each part of the book focuses on sort of a different event, but they're all connected through these through lines. Like, there's nothing that's wasted. All the characters and events all come together in the end, and the ending was so good. Like, you think you know what's going to happen at the end because leading up to it, but then John Irving just totally flips it around. The writing is so good. I love the reflective nature of the book. It's written from John's perspective and sort of looking back on his childhood. So there's also parts of the book that are from him as an adult, and those parts aren't as enjoyable as the parts in their childhood, but it's not a big part of the book at all. They're just very small snippets of him as an adult. Yeah, this is a book that I'm definitely going to be thinking about for a long time. A book I'm going to want to get my own copy of eventually so I can reread it and underline things and look at it from knowing, like, what's going to happen, just to see all the threads come together. This is a book I don't hear a lot of people talk about, but it's one that I think is sort of a modern classic in its own right, and one that I really recommend. So that is A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving. The next book I read was This Must Be the Place by Maggie O'Farrell. This one was probably the biggest disappointment of the month. I really love Maggie O'Farrell's writing. Like, it just envelops you, and it's beautiful, and the way she crafts words together is, like, I would just, like, be in awe of her writing as I was reading this. But the story itself fell flat for me personally, so it's kind of a difficult book to describe. Basically, it focuses on this couple. Daniel and Claudette are this couple. They're married, and the book has a very broad view of their relationship, and each chapter is a different perspective to give a different angle of their relationship. Daniel loses custody of his children from his first marriage, and so he goes off to Ireland, where he finds Claudette, who is an old movie star who has gone into hiding, and they meet, fall in love, and then you're following their own ups and downs of their marriage with their children, and then Daniel trying to reconnect with the children of his first marriage. There's a lot going on with this book, which is part of the reason it fell flat for me. I just feel like it was trying to do too much. It felt like almost two different books, like Daniel's story and Claudette's story felt like two different books that were just forced together, like trying to make it work to like weave these two plots together, and it just felt very forced to me. I was really hoping Maggie O'Farrell would bring it all together in the end, but it just didn't. It just was not satisfying. I also felt like they were both just really terrible people, and I didn't enjoy reading from their perspectives, and then the other perspectives were from peripheral characters that I didn't even really feel like I knew very well. They would just all of a sudden be narrating a portion of the book, and I'd be like, who is this person? So overall, I love Maggie O'Farrell's writing. I love her novel, Hamnet. That's probably the one I would recommend over this one. If this sounds like something you would enjoy, like, give it a try. For me, it was just like a 2-star book, which is unfortunate because I really wanted to love it. It sounded like it had a lot of things I would love, but it just didn't. So that is This Must Be the Place by Maggie O'Farrell. The next book I read was The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. This is another book that's been very hyped up over the past few months. I don't know what's gotten into me this year with reading all the new releases. I'm not usually on top of them like this, but there have just been some really good ones that have come out, so I'm very excited to be reading them when there's still a lot of buzz going on. So The Ministry of Time is a sci-fi literary sort of book. It follows an unnamed narrator who works for the Ministry of Time as a bridge. So her job is to help people who are brought back from the past into the present day, to help them get acclimated to modern life. This book is not exactly what I was expecting when I first heard about it. I thought it was just going to be more of like a fun sci-fi romp sort of book, and that's not really what it is. It's way more reflective and insightful. It deals with a lot of themes of like the past and how it influences the present and how times have changed. It deals with, the feeling of being out of place or not feeling like you're in the place that you should be. And I was very impressed that this is Kaliane Bradley's debut novel. She's an incredibly talented writer. Like, the way she crafts words and explains the simplest things was just beautiful. There's so many lines that I wish I could have underlined and looked back on. I will say, for a sci-fi book, this is not very heavy in world building. The time travel aspects are not explained very well, or at all. So you do kind of have to suspend your disbelief. It's way more focused on the themes that it's exploring and all of that, and not necessarily the technical sci-fi aspects. So if that's something that is important to you, you may not like this book. I will say, for me, the ending was a little bit hard to follow. Like, there's a lot going on that you really need to pay attention to. But I still really enjoyed this book. It's a pretty easy one to just fly through. It's like just over 300 pages, I think. It's funny, it's sad, it's beautiful. There's romance. It's like so many things just mashed together, and one of the most original books I've read in a very long time. So that is The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley, and I gave this one 4 stars. Next book I read was Agatha Christie, An Elusive Woman by Lucy Worsley. This is a nonfiction biography on Agatha Christie's life. I've been a huge Agatha Christie fan for years. I've read several of her books, but somehow I've never actually known anything about her life or what led her to become like the most successful author to ever live. So I was very excited to pick this one up and learn more about Agatha and her life, and it did not disappoint. She's definitely one of the most fascinating people I've read about. She's one of those people who makes you feel like you haven't done anything with your life because of how much she was able to do. Really loved Lucy Worsley, the way Lucy Worsley constructed this book. You can tell she really has a passion and care for Agatha Christie and her life, and she makes it very accessible. The chapters aren't too long. Even though this is a pretty long book, it doesn't feel like it at all. And so if you're new to biography, I think this would be a good one to turn to. The only thing I didn't love about this was that she does spoil some Agatha Christie mysteries as she's going through and explaining like the Christie tricks and you know what made Agatha Christie stand out and how she brought something new to the mystery genre that has stood the test of time. So you can sort of skip those paragraphs when they come up if you don't want to be spoiled for some of these mysteries. I kind of feel like the Christie tricks could have been explored without using the spoilers, but it was fine. It wasn't too big of a deal to just skip over. One of the more interesting parts of this book is that in 1926, Agatha Christie mysteriously disappears for a week, and to this day no one knows entirely what happened. And so that whole section of the book was very interesting because Lucy Worsley really explores it in a way that makes sense and takes away a lot of the sinister rumors or speculation surrounding Agatha's disappearance in that year. So that was very interesting. I do highly recommend this book, especially if you're an Agatha Christie fan, and now I feel like I definitely need to read some Agatha Christie this fall. Like, it just needs to happen now that I know more about her and can fully appreciate the background of her books and sort of see the tie-ins to her own life. So that is Agatha Christie, An Elusive Woman by Lucy Worsley. And the last book I picked up is kind of a weird one to end on, but it's one I wanted to talk about anyway, just because I want to have a record of all the books I've read. So I will just briefly talk about this one. It is Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. This is, to put it bluntly, a book about sex, so if that's uncomfortable, you can skip ahead. I'm going to just talk about this one very briefly, since it is like a personal topic that I don't think needs to go into detail on this video. But this is a book that takes a very different approach to sexuality. It mainly focuses on women and how they view sex, the common experiences that women may have that they may think isn't normal or that they just are afraid to talk about. So in a lot of ways it's very encouraging and reassuring, make you feel like you're not alone. But this is sort of a book I would recommend more as a reference and not something to read all the way through. It's something that you can take what applies to you and then just sort of skim the rest. So a lot of this book did not really apply to me, so it wasn't that helpful. But then the parts that do apply are very encouraging and helpful. So definitely just keep that in mind. Like, you don't have to read every word in detail. I will also say that, like, I am a Christian, so this book is definitely a very secular view of sexuality, which is fine. But if you have the same sort of worldview that I would, then I would just give a heads up that, you know, this is a secular view of sexuality, so there's a lot of things that you probably won't agree with. So I would recommend maybe pairing it with a book on, like, the theology of sex to sort of get a more well-rounded look that may apply to you better. If you think anything in this book would be helpful to you, I would recommend it. There's just, you know, those caveats that I mentioned before. But that is Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, and I gave this one 3 stars. Those are all the books I read this month. I'm already in the middle of some books that I'm really loving for September, so I can't wait to talk to you about them when I do my September wrap-up. But definitely let me know your thoughts on any of these books, what you read in August, and if you would recommend anything to me. I'll have all the titles listed down below in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe. I hope you have a good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever and wherever you are watching this, and I will see you in the next one.